airborne particle testing. Okay. Aside from that, we also test for pressure differential or displacement airflow measurement. Also, we monitor the temperature. There is a monitoring of temperature monitoring. And also, we do disinfect and assess the surfaces we are dealing with, especially sa compounding. Okay. So, each element class of the monitoring program must be included in the sampling plan. Okay. So what do we mean by non-viable particles? Okay, when we say non-viable particles, these are particles that do not contain a living organism. Okay, kaya siya non-viable. Such particles are those yung particles na nashe-shed from paper or dust. Okay, yun sila. Okay. In contrast, viable particles are those living organisms. What are these examples of viable organisms or viable particles? Examples, we have the bacteria or fungal spores. Okay? These bacteria or fungal spores class require non-viable particles to travel. Okay? That is why we require testing of viable and non-viable airborne particles testing. Kasi even though si non-viable particles, they contain non-living organism, they can be a carrier. Okay? Or they can be the vehicle of the viable organism to travel anywhere in the area. Okay, so we also monitor the humidity, the sound, lighting. Okay, because this may also be considered by the facilities to enhance the environmental monitoring program. Okay, so as each element, itong element na ito, itong mga viable and non-viable airborne particle testing, pressure differential or displacement airflow measurement, temperature monitoring, and surface disinfection and assessment, they must be included in the sampling plan. Okay, with of course sample locations, methods of collection, sampling frequency, and other specifics. Depende kung ano yung type na imo-monitor natin or depende kung ano yung monitoring na piniperform natin. Okay? So, the environmental monitoring sampling frequency class must occur as at a minimum listed on the next page. Okay? With possible additional times based on the type of testing. So what are those minimum? Okay? What are those minimum? The minimums are shown in your screen. We have at the commissioning and certification of new facilities and equipment. Okay? So ito yun is yung mga minimum na required with possible additional times based on the type of testing. Okay, so we test at the commissioning and certification of new facility and equipment. Okay, so pag abot pa lang sa ato ang mga bago na facility and equipment, we do test them. Okay, we perform those environmental monitoring, those elements that we mentioned, yung mga viable and non-viable testing. Okay, so on and so forth. Okay, so we ma-test upon the arrival. After that, the next testing will be every 6 months during routine. That's routine class, sorry. Every 6 months during routine recertification. Okay, during routine recertification of equipment and facilities. Also, after any facility or equipment maintenance, including yung construction or remodeling of adjacent departments or work on shared air handlers. Okay, so aside sa every 6-month routine recertification, kapag merong facility or equipment maintenance, nire-retest din natin yung class. And lastly, also, at any points when there is problems, when there are problems identified with products, preparations, or employee technique, or if yung product mismo natin is suspected to be the source of patient infection. Okay, so that's the minimum, okay, or that's the events that we should test our equipments, or we should test our or we should monitor our environment. Okay, so I think there is someone entering. Let me enter. Okay, so kindly tell me, class, if it choppy tayo or if hindi nyo makita ang screen ko. So let's proceed with the next slide. So ito siya, class. We have mentioned kanina yung different requirements, environmental monitoring requirements, yung mga elements. Okay, so we have temperature, di ba? We do temperature monitoring. So I've got this from American Society of Hospital Pharmacists na handbook. So ito yung kanilang requirements, environmental monitoring requirement parameters. Okay, so we have temperature, we have pressure differential or velocity across line of demarcation, we have non-viable particles, we have surface sampling, and also we have electronic device sample of viable particles. Okay. Also stated in the table is sino yung magmamonitor and ilang beses siya, the frequency. Okay. So, according to the table, the temperature must be monitored by the compounding personnel or facilities management staff daily at a minimum. Okay, minimum yan daily. Okay, so how about the pressure differential or velocity across in line of demarcation? It's also monitored by the compounding personnel each shift or daily, but preferably each shift. Okay, each shift in preferred. Okay, for the non-viable particles, a qualified certifier can monitor it. It must be performed at least every 6 months. Okay, at least every 6 months. Okay, ang surface sampling naman can be done by or can be monitored by the compounding or laboratory personnels. It is done or it is tested periodically as defined by compounding and infection control personnel at least every 6 months or after significant changes in procedures or cleaning practices. Okay? How about the electronic devices? Sample of viable particles. It can be monitored by the compounding personnel or a qualified certifier at least every 6 months. Okay? So, those are the different environmental monitoring parameters in with its frequency and personnel involved in its monitoring. Okay? So, this next table is we have talked about the temperature monitoring. So, ano-ano ba yung mga storage conditions ng ating mga products? Okay? Or ng ating environment mismo. Okay? So, ito yung mga parameters or ito yung storage condition with its corresponding temperatures in degrees centigrade and Fahrenheit. So, ito yung class, ito yung standard. So, when we say that the environment must be in room temperature, dapat yung temperature monitoring natin must be between 20 to 25 degrees Celsius, or that would be 68 to 77 degree Fahrenheit. This is according to the USP class sa United States Pharmacopeia. Okay. If the product should be in bioref or it should be refrigerated, it must be between 2 to 8 degrees Celsius, or that's cold temperature. That's between 36 to 46 degree Fahrenheit. If the product must be frozen, then therefore, ang kanyang temperature in degrees centigrade should be negative 25 to negative 10 degrees Celsius, or that would be negative 13 to 14 degree Fahrenheit. Okay? So, yung temperature monitoring natin, class, um, yung mga compounding, if magko-compound tayo ng sterile preparations or storage ng sterile products, it must be in any controlled room temperature, meaning between 20 to 25 degrees Celsius. Okay? So, again, yung any controlled temperature area used for compounding sterile preparations or for storage of sterile products, it must be monitored at least once daily. And also, i-document mo yan doon sa logbook mo. Okay, you have a separate logbook for temperature monitoring. You must monitor that at least once daily. So you can monitor twice or thrice daily. Kasi minimum lang naman yung once. Usually the ideal one is twice. Okay, ideal is twice. One in the afternoon, morning, and then one in the afternoon. Okay, so the facilities class should maintain a comfortable room temperature. That would be again room temperature. So that would be 20 to 25 degrees Celsius. Or pwedeng cooler pa talaga below 20 degrees Celsius. Okay? So um if yung facilities class nag-use ng continuous temperature recording devices, yung mga thermometer natin, in order to monitor the temperature, yung devices na din na yun class must also be um, calibrated also. This is to ensure na tama pa yung temperature na pinapakita. Okay? So, again, they must be monitored and documented once daily to ensure they are functioning properly. Okay, so ito na yung again, ito yung range ng ating mga temperatures according to USP. So we have room temperature, we have cold temperature or the refrigerated temperature, and we have frozen temperature or yung nasa freezer. Okay? Yung next naman na table class are those particle limits. Okay, particle limits for sterile compounding areas, which is adapted from the USP chapter 797. Okay, so the primary engineering control for ISO class is 5. Its buffer area and anti-area opening into a negative pressure room must be 7. And then the anti-area opening only into a positive pressure room is 8. You just remember the digits class. Okay, you just remember the digits kasi ito lang we cannot change this this is constant. Okay, ito na talaga yung nakasaad sa USP. So just memorize again the digits. Okay, so the limit on number of more than or equal to 0.5 micron particles of air should be sa primary engineering controls natin 3520, 3,520. Sa buffer area and anti-area naman, that's 352,000. And sa anti-area opening only into a positive pressure room is 3,520,000. Okay, again, just remember the digits. Okay, so this is the viable environmental monitoring recommended action levels for microbial contamination. Okay, all of these table class are adapted from the USP. Okay, so ISO classification natin is 5. So our recommended action levels for microbial contamination is 1. Okay, so we have a legend there. So yung 1, meaning dyan, samples from ISO class 5 environment should normally yield no microbiological contaminants. Kasi 1 lang 1 lang dapat ang kaniyang maximum. Okay? So, ideally, 0. Okay? But 1 is accepted pa. Kasi nga, ISO Class 5 environment should normally yield no microbiological contaminants. This is in CFU class ha. CFU is colony forming units per cubic meter. Okay, the accepted maximum na CFUs for ISO classification 5 is 1. 1 colony forming units per cubic meter. Okay, I believe you are familiar na with CFUs, colony forming unit, kasi you have microbiology na, 'di ba? Sa third year, 'di ba, ang microbio. Okay, so I believe you are familiar na. Andyan pala sa baba, CFU per cubic meter. Colony forming units per cubic meter. Okay, andito na sa baba nakasulat. This one, ayan. Okay? So how about ISO 5? ISO class 7. ang kaniyang recommended action levels for microbial contamination is 10. For ISO 8 or above, that's 100 CFUs per cubic meter. Okay? So let's proceed with the surface disinfection and sampling assessment. Okay, so yung touch contamination class originating from contaminated work surfaces must be minimized and prevented if possible. Okay, so yung surface sampling provides facilities with a snapshot of the effectiveness of their infection procedures, including yung mga techniques and cleaning products. Okay, it must be part of the overall quality assurance plan. Okay, ito sila. Itong surface sampling. Okay? So, using a sterile nutrient agar contact plate for flat surfaces or swabs for equipment and other non-flat surfaces, sampling must be sampling must be performed in all ISO classified areas on a periodic basis at a minimum of every 6 months, class. Okay, minimum of every 6 months. Or when significant procedural or cleaning changes are being implemented. Okay, so saan natin siya, anong ginagamit natin na agar? It's sterile nutrient agar contact plate. Okay, for those flat surfaces or swabs for equipment, we use this one. Oh, as well as yung mga non-flat surfaces. So we use sterile nutrient agar for the sampling. Okay, at least every 6 months yan. That's the minimum. Okay. Sa surface infection subsampling and assessment class, there must also be a specific plan detailing the location of each sample. Okay, so again, there is a specific plan detailing the location of each sample, and also it must be devised so that the same locations are repeated with each testing session. Okay, so yung mga contact plates natin, they require pressing a plate directly to the surface being tested, while swabbing requires swabbing an area and then submersing the swab in the correct amount of diluent, and then swabbing onto or into a sterile nutrient agar surface. Okay? So, agar plates class will leave residue on contact surfaces that must be cleaned with sterile water and disinfect with 70% isopropyl alcohol. Okay, so yung reports natin class or the results must be reported. That's results class, sorry. Results must be reported in CFUs. Okay, CFUs or colony forming units per plate. Okay, so again, results must be reported in CFUs or colony forming units per plate. Re-evaluation of work practices and cleaning procedures class should occur if the CFU count exceeds the suggested action levels. Again, when do we reevaluate the work practices and cleaning procedures? If the CFU count exceeds the suggested action level. Okay, if it again exceeds the action level. Okay, so this one. Okay, so again, class, if it exceeds the CFU count levels, we must reevaluate it. So this is the table for this is the table that we use kung kailan natin siya ititest. Okay, ito yung table na ginagamit natin. It's the recommended action levels for personal testing. So we have if ang PEC niya is more than 1, so we should test it. And then sa buffer area naman more than 10, test na yan, re-evaluate na yan. Ante-area more than 100, re-evaluate na. Okay. This is in CFUs class, more than 1 CFUs, more than 10 CFUs, more than 100 CFUs. Okay. So including the glove fingertip class, we also test that one. We have glove fingertip sampling. Okay. So, That's for our environmental monitoring and documentation. Okay, let's proceed with the packaging and labeling. Are you still there?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So this will be the last topic, yung packaging and labeling um for this chapter. Okay? So, packaging class and subsequent labeling are critical to patient safety. Kasi nga, if we don't have labels, if you don't have proper packaging, if we don't have proper packaging, masisira yung ating products. If we don't have proper labeling, there will be mix-ups, okay, ng mga drugs. Okay, paano natin malalaman if, para sa kay patient 1 ba talaga ito, if we don't have labeling. Okay, that is why it's very critical to patient safety, both the packaging and labeling. Packaging class must be appropriate to preserve both sterility and stability until the BUD. Okay, BUD means beyond use date. Okay, proper labeling requires an understanding of compounding risk levels and also how to determine the BUDs or the beyond use dates based on both stability and sterility. The BUDs class, you will actually know this sa QC. Kapag nag-QC na kayo, you will be introduced on how to um, know or how to determine the BUDs of the products. Okay? The labels for single compounded preparations must at a minimum include the following. We have the name of active ingredients. We have the amounts of concentrations of active ingredients. We have the BUD and time. We have the storage requirements. And we have the identification of responsible compounding personnel. Okay? Labels for batch prepared products class must also include the control number or the lot number. Also, the appropriate auxiliary labeling, including the precautions. Also, the device-specific instructions when appropriate. Okay, so ito yung mga information that we must include in our labels and also in our packaging. Okay? So the federal and state regulations and accreditation requirements class may necessitate additional label and information before the product is dispensed to a specific patient. Okay, so the verification of compounding accuracy and sterility incorporates physical inspection, ensuring that the compounding accuracy process are in place and also that the sterility and endotoxin testing is also being done. Okay? So that is why ganyan ka-important yung ating packaging and labeling kasi nga it has a role in the critical role to the patient safety. That is why we must include this information to avoid mix-ups and also to maintain the stability and sterility of the product. Okay, I think that would be all for the IV admixtures. Okay, that would be all for the IV admixtures. We have actually, kasi kailangan natin maghabol. I'm going to discuss the education and training. This will be very quick class. 10 slides lang ito class. Okay? So, tapusin na lang natin ito so that next Friday and Saturday, we are going to discuss the remaining 2 chapters for hospital pharmacy. Okay, may 2 chapters pa tayo. We have introductory for clinical pharmacy and lastly, we have yung mga laws governing the pharmacy practice. Okay, I'm going to give you an assignment for that, yung mga laws governing the pharmacy practice. I'm going to send the template later at night na lang. Okay, so let me make something template na lang para mas madali nyo siya pag-aralan. Okay? So, let's proceed with wrong ang kanyang ano. This is education and training program. Wrong ang ating label. That's not compounding sterile preparations class. I'm going to change na lang that one later. Our discussion for this time is to discuss education and training program of hospital pharmacist. Okay? So, again, madali lang to siya class, no worries. So, let's start first with the drug information. Okay? Yung provision ng drug information class or the DI is among the fundamental professional responsibilities of all pharmacists. Okay? Recent practice trends including yung increased provision of medication therapy management services and yung mga efforts natin to obtain provider status have placed pharmacists in increasingly complex patient care roles. Okay, and as well as it necessitated a higher level of competence by all pharmacists in meeting these drug information needs. Okay, so yung ating mga drug information class, they may be patient-specific, they may be for academic, or when you say academic, it's for educational purposes, or it can be population-based. Okay, when you say population-based, it aids in the decision-making process for evaluating medication use for groups of patients. Okay? So, yung goal natin, class, sa drug information or yung goal natin of providing carefully evaluated, evidence-based recommendations to support specific medication use practices is to enhance the quality of patient care. Okay, yan yung goal natin. As well as to improve patient outcomes. Okay, and lastly, also to ensure that there is a prudent use of resources. Okay, aside from the goals, we also have the primary focus of our drug information, which is to describe the contemporary drug information activities, including the application of a systematic approach, which are we going to discuss on the next slide. Okay, so what are the different drug information activities? So to be an effective provider of drug information as a pharmacist, you must be, again, an effective provider of drug information. Okay, so in order to become an effective provider of drug information, the pharmacist must exercise excellent oral and written communication skills and should be able to anticipate and evaluate the drug information needs of patients and healthcare professionals. Also, he or she or the pharmacist must obtain appropriate and complete background information as described in the systematic approach for responding to drug information requests, which are we going to discuss on the next few slides. Also, the use of a systemic approach to address drug information needs by effectively searching, retrieving, and critically evaluating the literature must also be a skill for an effective provider of drug information. Okay, so kapag gumagamit ka ng systematic approach, again, we are going to, ano yan later, isa-isahin natin yan kung paano ba tayo uh, paano ba tayo mag-approach sa ating i-inform na patient in systematic way. Okay, so when you say systematic approach, you must assess the study design, the statistics, the bias, the limitations, and the applicability. Okay, kasi systematic approach yan. And then also, to be an effective provider of drug information, he or she must appropriately synthesize, communicate, document, and apply pertinent information to the patient care situation. Okay? May mga variety of drug information activities tayo, class, that must be performed by pharmacists depending on the particular practice setting and need. Every pharmacist should have the skills to perform the following drug activities. Ano yung mga following drug activities or drug information activities? Ano yung mga skills na yon? Number 1, providing drug information to patients, caregivers, and healthcare professionals. Also, creating and maintaining currency of a variety of print and online educational resources for patients. Ano yung mga print and online educational resources? Yung mga prints, we have yung mga tip sheets, mga pamphlets. Okay, so you are also responsible for that if you are a drug information provider. Also, hindi lang siya exclusive for patients but also for healthcare professionals. Other healthcare professionals also receive pamphlets and tip sheets. Okay? Example of this is yung mga in-service documents and also newsletters on topics such as optimal medication use, general health, or select clinical questions. Okay, we also educate healthcare professionals on safe and effective medication use policies and processes, including development of resources to communicate the information. Also, we lead or participate in counting education services for healthcare professionals. Also, may nagpo-precept din tayo, na nagiging preceptor din tayo and educator sa mga pharmacy students and residents. Also, the drug information for provider must participate in quality improvement research projects and drug cost analysis. Also, lastly, the drug information provider must contribute to the biomedical literature and providing peer review for other contributors. Okay, so again, ito yung mga skills that dapat ma-obtain ng um, drug information provider or basically ng mga pharmacist kasi we are drug information provider. Okay, as discussed, ano ba yung mga systematic approach? Ano yung steps in obtaining systematic approach for responding to drug information request? Okay, so this was actually first introduced by Watanabe et al. In 1975. Okay, so it was first introduced by Watanabe et al. In 1975. This approach class has been modified and expanded over the years to ensure that all relevant information is considered prior to formulating a response. Okay, so ano ba yung importance ng gathering pertinent patient data and understanding yung context ng questions? Okay? So, dinescribe niya dito sa systematic approach na to. So, a systematic approach may be outlined as follows. Number 1, identify the requestor. So, in order to obtain complete information and develop a response with appropriate perspective, consider the health literacy and also professional background of the requestor. Okay, so again, consider jud ang health literacy and professional background ng requestor. So, if hindi siya ganyan ka-health literate, so dapat you provide intensive drug information and sabton jud nimo siya. You should not use jargon words jud, knowing that it's not that the patient is not that literate enough in health. So, pasabton jud nimo siya in the most common language, in the mother tongue talaga na language. Okay, so define the true question and information need. So you must identify the true question and information needed by asking probing question of the requestor. Ano yung mga example nito? Why is the question being asked? Okay, you ask yourself, why is the question being asked? Does the question pertain to the specific patient? Sa kanya lang ba to or nagko-question siya for others? Okay, itong mga question na to, class, it may help reveal important details of the true question. Okay? So this kind of information helps in optimizing the search process and also assessing the appropriate time frame of the response need. Okay, number 3 is to obtain complete background information. Okay, doon sa number 1, you have background information na, the health literacy. Okay, and also the professional background. But sa number 3, you obtain the complete background information na. When you say complete background information, it includes the medical record of the patient data. If applicable, you individualize the response to meet the requester's need. Next, we have to categorize the question. You classify the request class as patient-specific or academic. Okay, kasi 'di ba, drug information can be patient-specific, it can be academic, and also it can be for ano yung isa? Ano yung isa dito? Population-based. Okay? So it can be patient-specific, population-based, or education for academic education purposes. So you classify the request class. You classify it as a patient specific ba or academic or by type of question. Example, we have product availability, adverse drug event, compatibility, compounding or formulation, and also dosage drug administration. Also, if there is drug interaction. Okay, you classify that according to the uh, type of drug information needed, may it be academic, patient-specific, or population-based, or you classify it according to type of question. Ano ba yung type of question niya? Is it about product availability? Is it about ADRs? Is it about the compatibility of each drugs? Is it about compounding or formulation? Is it about the dosage or administration? Is it about the drug interaction? Yung drug-drug, drug disease, or drug laboratory interaction, yun siya. Or is it about the efficacy or therapeutic use? Yun. Or is it about the drug product identification? Or is it about the pharmacokinetics? Okay, so you classify or you categorize the question. Perform a systematic search. When you say perform a systematic search, you search for appropriate tertiary, secondary, and primary resources, including electronic resources as if it necessitates you. Okay? And then analyze the information. Evaluate, interpret, and combine information from the resources used. Other information needs should be anticipated as a result of the information gathered. Okay? Disseminate the information. Provide an oral or written response or both as needed by the requestor that specifically applies the information to the particular situation. The information, its urgency, and its purpose may influence the method of response. Okay? That is why we should have supporting documentation para, if possible, para mas solid yung ating pag-i-inform sa patient. Okay? Um, dapat actually mas okay na primary literature yung ating supporting documentation kasi mas heavy or yung kanyang credibility is mas heavy compared to those secondary and tertiary. Okay? Sa documentation naman, you should document the request, information resources used, the information found in each source, and the time spent on the response, as well as the response itself as appropriate for the request and practice setting. And then lastly, follow-up. Okay? So sa follow-up class, we perform a follow-up assessment to determine the utility of the information provided and whether the information resulted in changes in medication use practices or patient outcomes. Okay, so that is how we approach the requestor in a systematic way. First, identify the requestor. Second, define the true question and information need. Third, obtain complete background information. Fourth, categorize the question. Fifth, perform a systematic search. Sixth, analyze the information. Seven, disseminate the information. Eight, document it. And then nine, follow up. Okay? So let's proceed with the hospital pharmacy internship program. 'Di ba may internship program na kayo next year pa, no? Fourth year? Kapag fourth year na kayo? Or ngayon yun? Ngayon yun na year?
Next year pa, ma'am.
Okay, next year pa. Okay, so I think ngayon na year gi-practice na to ng BROC. Okay? The EPP or the experiential pharmacy practice. Okay? When you say experiential pharmacy practice class, this was guidelines na ito siya ng Commission on Higher Education or ng CHED. Okay, so meron actually guidelines na ni-release ang CHED on the conduct of experiential pharmacy practice of pharmacy students during the pandemic period. Okay, so dahil wala pa tayong tawag nito, wala pa tayong face-to-face na internship period. So, nagpalabas si CHED kung paano ba yung paano ba magre-resort into internship pa rin yung academe na ma-feel pa rin ng mga students na parang nag-face-to-face sila. Okay, so we have this term experiential pharmacy practice. So the experiential pharmacy practice of the Bachelor of Science in Pharmacy class, Bachelor of Science in Pharmacy program includes internship in 5 areas of pharmacy practice in the last year, covering a minimum of 1,200 hours equivalent to 24 credit units. Okay, so ano-ano yung mga 5 areas? You are going to discuss this ata, I think, kapag 4th year na kayo. Okay? So, ano-ano yung 5 areas? We have hospital, pharmacy, industrial pharmacy, or the manufacturing pharmacy. We have community pharmacy. We have institutional pharmacy. We have regulatory and public health. Okay, yan yung 5 areas for the experiential pharmacy practice. Okay, so again, when you say experiential pharmacy practice, it refers to the practice of pharmacy in CHED accredited pharmacy establishments as supervised by preceptors in the hospital, industry, community, institutional, public health units, and health regulatory agencies as part of the last year of the BSP curriculum. Okay? So again, when you say last year, so 4th year talaga siya tinuturo. Okay? Sa time kasi namin, we started 3rd year, kaso lang face-to-face pa yan eh. Okay? So, hello? Sandali lang class ha, for a while lang, for a while. Okay, sorry for that. There is an emergency sa branch. Okay, so again, so when you say experiential pharmacy practice, again, this refers to the, am I still screen sharing?
No, ma'am.
Ay, wala na. Sandali. Okay, okay, okay. Okay, sorry for that. I will screen share ha. So, madali na lang talaga to class. We will finish before our time, before 10 p.m. Can you see my screen?
Wala pa, ma'am.
Wala pa. Sandali lang ha. How about this one?
Okay na, ma'am.
Okay. For a while ha. Saglit lang. Okay, so let's proceed with the experiential pharmacy practice. So again, meron tayong 5 areas dito but I am going to discuss the hospital pharmacy lang. Okay, so ano-ano ba yung meron sa hospital pharmacy? So as shown in your screen, I got this from the guidelines, yung table na ito. So for the hospital pharmacy, we have a sample learning outcomes. Number sa letter A, dyan yung anong outcome dapat. Okay, so describe the distributive and clinical pharmacy functions of the hospital pharmacist. Basic hospital pharmacy operations. Okay? Also, if face-to-face yan class, we have these sample activities. Sa face-to-face class, it must be supervised by preceptors. When you say preceptors class, ito yun sila yung um, mga people or yung mga expert in an institution or internship site who gives practical experience and training to a student. Okay, they are preceptor. Okay, so yung face-to-face, it is supervised by the preceptor. Okay, so first, of course, na orientation sa uh, orientation discussion on the distributive functions in hospital areas. Example, we have inpatient, general outpatient drug distribution, floor stock unit dose, record keeping, and etc. Okay, so orientation discussion on clinical functions such as drug information provision, medication history taking, medication counseling, drug utilization reviews, among others. Okay? So, kapag walang face-to-face or akong virtual lang, we have webinars on or synchronous lecture discussion with teaching videos on basic hospital pharmacy operations such as drug distribution systems, record keeping, the medication profile. Okay? So, I believe we have glimpse na, di ba? Or kumbaga, na-discuss na natin yung drug distribution systems. Sa ating internship program, malalaman nyo yan more pa, ano yung drug distribution systems. Kasi the preceptor will provide, if it's virtual, the preceptor will provide pictures, videos on drug distribution systems. Okay? So we have synchronous discussion as well with the actual pharmacist activities on drug information provision, medication history taking, medication counseling, and drug utilization reviews, among others. So this is equivalent to 2 hours each. So that's 4 hours. Okay? Sa baba pa, yung actual hospital tour in various areas including the hospital pharmacy, that's 4 hours. Kasi wala mang face-to-face, if virtual lang, so magkakaroon ng virtual tour of the hospital and the hospital pharmacy. I actually got the chance to become a preceptor, pero hindi sa hospital, it's in the institutional pharmacy. So, kasi wala mang face-to-face, nag-virtual tour na lang kami. So, nag-send ako ng mga pictures sa kanila on my presentation na this is the the grocery area, this is the pharmacy area. Okay, so I provided virtual tour na lang sa kanila kasi walang face-to-face. Okay, so letter B, apply the knowledge